Hey guys, this is Nils. What's up? I'm Nils Davis. I'm a product manager and I'm the author of the Secret Product Manager Handbook, which is a actual book for actual product managers. I also write a blog of the same name and I have the YouTube channel, so thanks for joining me here. In this video today, I talk about a pretty cool idea called the Three Laws of Marketing Physics by a guy named Doug Hall. I'll share some details about that as we go along. If you like this video, please hit that like button. Please share it with your product manager friends if you have any. I hope you do. And I love to get more viewers, and I love to see your comments as well. So if you have any thoughts on this topic or other topics about product management, let me know in the comments. I also provide a few links in the comments related to the topic on the three laws of marketing physics today. And so take a look at those if you want to find a link to the book and a link to my article about the book, and of course a link to my book. Those are all down there. So without any further ado, let's get started. If your product does well on these things, on the three laws of marketing physics, then it's much more likely to be successful than if it does poorly. And so we're going to talk about what those are. I'm going to map it to some other ideas that we've been talking about a lot on the videos. And I think you'll see it's yet another good framework / mental model for thinking about how to help your product become successful. So, the three laws of marketing physics. We move on. Oops, went too fast. The three laws basically, and this shouldn't, in some sense, it shouldn't be too surprising. Now, also maybe you've seen my book, and I talk about this in the book. But the three laws are that your product has an overt benefit, and it's typically you want to focus on one overt benefit. It has a dramatic difference, meaning there's some way that it's really different from other alternatives that the prospect can choose, and that you can show why the prospect should trust that your product will do what you say it does. So a real reason to believe. So those are sort of the key ideas. They come from this great book, as I said. Well, I'm blowing it on the they come from this great book, as I said, called Jumpstart Your Business Brain. This guy by a guy named Doug Hall. You may or may not have heard of him. He's actually written a number of books. He's a pretty well-known innovator and thinker about how to do innovation. His clients are Fortune 1000 companies and often Fortune 10 companies that come to his place and do a pretty big deal of innovation. He has like 10 senior executives come and stay for a week on his ranch, and they do this very intense amount of work. But he also does a lot of research about innovation. He's very clever about lots of ideas that he has. I first learned about him on a great podcast that he had. It was actually also a radio show that he had on NPR. This was probably 20 years ago now. But he would get questions from the audience about how to improve their marketing, their business experience, things like that. And he would answer them with just such intelligent and clever ways of solving problems related to marketing and getting your product sold and things like that, that I was very impressed. And so I went to a workshop that he did, or an all-day seminar that he did. It was super valuable. And also, as I say, I love his book. So highly recommended. Doug Hall, this book. It's hard to get a lot of his information. A lot of it is, you have to pay for if you don't. Well, the book you have to pay for too. But a lot of his other information is also locked up behind things where he asks you to pay. It doesn't, I don't fault him for that, of course. I'm all in favor of people getting paid for expertise. But if you want the inexpensive version, check out the book. Anyway, so let's move on to talk about the actual three laws themselves. So the three laws are that your product needs to have an overt benefit. I mentioned this on the other slide. You have to give prospects a real reason to believe that what you're promising they will get, and there has to be a reason to choose you over somebody else, a dramatic difference. And the stronger you can make these, the more likely you are to be successful. And Doug Hall has a bunch of research that says that if you are strong on all of these three components, you are 3 times or more likely to be successful than versus a product that isn't strong on these three components. Now, it may be that the product is strong, or it may be that your message about the product is strong. And obviously, from the standpoint of the prospect, those are often the same things. If your message is not strong, then they don't know that your product is strong. So that goes back again to the importance of go-to-market. And I always talk about go-to-market as such a critical thing that we have to do as product managers and have to consider. So that is something that the three laws of marketing physics, they are about go-to-market and marketing, because they're about talking about your product as opposed to what your product does. Of course, your product has to deliver on the things that you are talking about here. And in fact, if you take it even one step further, an overt benefit is always with respect to some problem that the prospect has. And so that it always goes back to, my framework, which is that as product managers, we find market problems, we create solutions to those problems, and we take them to market. And so the overt benefit always relates to the problem that we're solving, that market problem that we found in sort of the first part of the framework. The dramatic difference has to do with what other alternatives the prospect has, and hopefully we learned about those when we were deciding that we should create a solution for this product. And of course, real reason to believe is a little bit different. It's not part of my frameworks per se, but it has to do with something else that I talk about a lot, which is customer success, customer stories, and finding the stories about customers achieving personal goals. So this all ties into that. Now, I think between this, and I'm going to share a little bit how this relates to the value proposition a little later. So I love all these little frameworks that have 3 items in them. So like this one, overt benefit, real reason to believe, dramatic difference. And then my framework, which is find a problem, create a solution, take it to market. And the value proposition, which is it's a product in a category, it does this for you, and here's why it's different from the competitor. So all these things that have 3 components, all these little frameworks. Now, the fact is that there's really sort of 4 things, because there's the problem, there's your solution and what it does, there's the dramatic difference piece, the difference of why choose mine, and then there's really the why should I believe you piece, which is in the 3 laws of marketing physics, that's the real reason to believe. Now, it's not part of my framework, find a market problem, create a solution, take it to market, except that take it to market really depends on your being able to tell stories about customers being successful, or about why customers will find this to be the best choice. So let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about let's talk a little bit more about the first topic. And actually, what I was going to do is so I've got a blank slide here. What I thought would be interesting to do would actually be to go into PowerPoint and actually do a little typing about some of these ideas. Now let me go find my PowerPoint window, which is over here. I have to get out of here. So what are some of the things about the overt benefit? Well, first of all, this ties back to the market problem, right? The market problem that I talk about constantly in my framework, right? Because we're recalling that my framework is find a market problem, create a solution, take the solution to market. So the big, of course, first step there is finding that market problem. So the overt benefit is always with respect to the big market problem. And so that's where you have to be able to articulate, particularly this is true for enterprise software customers, but it's true for any kind of customer. You have to be able to articulate what it is that your product does for the customer, right? And so if it's an enterprise software product, then what it does is it solves a problem for the customer. And we have to talk about what that is, and it has to be something important. And that's what we have to be able to articulate. Now, one thing that's really interesting about the book that I love is that he actually talks about he doesn't talk about enterprise software, and he doesn't necessarily even talk about sort of commercial type of products. A lot of the examples he uses are about restaurants. So he lives in a little town, or he does his summers in a little town up in Canada, up in eastern Canada, and there's a bunch of restaurants, and he uses these restaurants as his examples for how to talk about things like overt benefit, dramatic difference, and so on. And so part of the reason that that's so cool is that, even a sort of mundane topic like a restaurant, a small town restaurant, is something you can think about, use this framework to think about how to help those restaurants be more successful. So what is the overt benefit of a restaurant? Well, obviously to give you food. That's something that you can easily think about. But it's also things like, is the food tasty? Now that's a benefit, and it's also potentially a difference if the food is not tasty. But you can think about the fundamental thing about a restaurant is it's going to feed you. So there's a sort of inbuilt benefit there, and that's the overt benefit for a restaurant. We're going to feed you. We're going to talk about other examples of applying the 3 laws of marketing physics to restaurants. That's the most obvious one. That's super easy for a restaurant, right? They're going to give you food. So going back to the PowerPoint, let's talk a little bit more now about some other things that have to do with the benefit. So you want to focus on one major benefit, because it turns out that talking about multiple benefits really dilutes the message, and so you got to be careful about not letting that happen. So don't dilute your message with multiple benefits. Now I'm going to move on because I think the overt benefit part of this is pretty clear. It actually turns out to be something that I think in enterprise software we often don't do a good job of talking about the overt benefit or validating it and things like that. So let me come back here. I think that we often don't do as good a job of articulating that, because I don't think we often have done as good a job of finding the problem and articulating the problem as we need to do. So let's move on to the next one. So the next one he talks about, I'm gonna talk about dramatic difference. He actually puts them in a slightly different order. Real reason to believe. I think dramatic difference is really super important, and so let me move on to that one. Make sure I'm on the right thing here. Let me move over to here. Dramatic difference. So what's the dramatic difference? This is why you should choose, why the prospect should choose us versus competitors, right? Now, hopefully you learned about this when you were doing your market research about what the problems are that your prospects are facing and why the current solutions are not adequate to what they do. So this is related to why the current solutions are not adequate. And this, again, happens during, you really hopefully are finding a lot of this out during the market discovery phase. What else can I say about dramatic difference? I think this also is something that I've talked a lot about in other videos and in the book, but it's just really important to know that you have a difference. And so a lot of times what I see in marketing, and I think this is one of the reasons that Doug Hall called this out, is that in lots of marketing, there is very little discussion of what is that dramatic difference, and why should somebody buy my product versus another product where the description is exactly the same. You see this a lot of times, actually, when companies are moving up a little bit and they're starting to feel like, well, I don't want to market my product anymore. I want to start building a brand. And you see this happen over and over again. Then the brand becomes the focus of the marketing. But the reality of brands is that you don't build a brand by creating a brand. You build a brand by creating a product that people love, and the brand builds in the users, the heads of the users, or the heads of the customers. You don't build it. Now, you can do things to support that, but what happens a lot of times is these companies start marketing their brand, and what happens then is the brands are indistinguishable, or at least the brands don't carry the dramatic difference along with them. And I can give you lots of examples of this. I'm very familiar with one right now that I think is going to run into this problem that just started. And so, if your marketing doesn't include why should they choose me versus a competitor, it may be beautiful marketing, but it isn't going to achieve the job that you want it to achieve. So let's talk about the third point, which is the real reason to believe. And this is one where I think that we don't, where there's a real opportunity for us to do better as marketers. And this is really related to, as I've talked about, the stories our customers tell about our product. Now, think about going back to the example of a restaurant. Oh, I should have mentioned on the dramatic difference with the metaphor of with the example of the restaurant. So what are the dramatic differences between different restaurants? Well, for one thing, the dramatic difference might be the type of cuisine. So it might be that if you are the one way to market your restaurant, and I'll just go back to the previous slide, one way to market your restaurant is to say, oh, you can go to that plain old American burger place, or you can come to our restaurant where we have excellent high quality Japanese food. Well, that's a dramatic difference between if most of the restaurants in town are serving burgers and you're serving excellent Japanese food. That's a dramatic difference. Now, what's your dramatic difference from other Japanese restaurants? Well, that's certainly a question you can answer. You can say, well, unlike the other Japanese restaurants, we serve Japanese food in teppanyaki style, or we let you grill your own food, or we have the freshest fish. So all those things. Now, will somebody believe we have the freshest fish? Probably not if you're a sushi restaurant. But that is a potential difference if there's no other sushi restaurants, for example. So dramatic difference, really good thing to continue to think about. So let's go back to real reason to believe. This is related to the stories that our customers tell about our product. And in the restaurant example, what's the example of those? Well, reviews, of course. Yelp has become the great tool for real reason to believe. And as you use Yelp and you look at how many reviews there are and how many pluses and how many minuses and how many one-star reviews there are for somebody who got slow service and things like that. And you start to interpret, well, is this restaurant a place I should go eat, or is it a place I'm going to be disappointed? And of course, they can then use that stuff in their own marketing. And so another example there is, did they win a competition, for example? Oh, Bobby Flay came to our town and we had our specialty is the grilled cheese sandwich. We had a cook-off with Bobby Flay, and our grilled cheese sandwich beat Bobby Flay's grilled cheese sandwich. That would be a great reason to go there for a grilled cheese sandwich. You could be pretty confident that they know how the heck to make a grilled cheese sandwich if that's what you're interested in for that day. Now, that also works as a dramatic difference, right? How many restaurants can say, well, we beat Bobby Flay? So it plays both roles in that case. So that's kind of a neat thing to do. So a real reason to believe, it's the stories, it's the reviews, and it's in particular, I've talked about this in other videos, and I talk about it in the book as well, but what I call personal goals achieved. So these are, the nice thing about personal goals achieved is that they have a lot of emotional resonance for people. And so if you can talk about the real reason to believe in terms of people achieving their personal goals, this was the best meal I've ever had. That's a very strong thing to hear about a restaurant. This was the fastest onboarding experience I've ever had for an enterprise software product. Great story. That's not even a personal goal achieved. This onboarding experience was so great that it only took a day, and I actually made it to my kid's baseball game. Now, there's a personal goal achieved. I love talking about getting to my kid's baseball game, even though I don't have a kid that played baseball. My kid played softball. Anyway, so that's the real reason to believe, really critical, important thing to talk about, to think about. And then what I want to do next is I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, turn the PowerPoint back on, and tie this into one other important concept that you are intimately familiar with because you've heard me talk about it before, and that is the value proposition. So the value proposition is this very important concept that I think we too often don't pay as much attention to in product management. I mean, and I'm just inferring this because I look at how products are marketed and I don't see the value proposition being fully utilized. I hate that word, utilized. I often say used. In this case, I think utilization is utilized is the right word because I think it's that's sort of how the decision is made anyway, kind of like a robot. But anyway, the value proposition. So a reminder of this structure. It's the value proposition says your product is for a particular market or customer. It does a certain thing. It has some features, and it has differentiators. So you can see that there's a mapping between, not 100% mapping between the 3 laws of marketing physics and the value proposition. So of course the value proposition talks about who it's for. It talks about what it does. This is the overt benefit, hopefully. And then it talks about why choose us. That's of course the dramatic difference. And so you want to, let me go one more. There we go. Why choose us? Dramatic difference. And so this is what the value proposition does. And it's, as I said, it's not 100% mapping to the 3 laws of marketing physics. And I think that's really because there's 4 things you have to think about, not just 3. And the 4 things, of course, are the 3 on here, but also the real reason to believe. Now, sometimes the real reason to believe comes under why choose us, and but other times it is just left on the floor. So the point is that those are 2 really great frameworks that you can use to think about how to talk about your product. Is essentially that's what the bottom line is. So I hope you enjoyed this short video, live video about the 3 laws of marketing physics. And I tried a little something different. I did the live PowerPoint. Hopefully you enjoyed that as I went through. And then let me know your thoughts and comments on this, and if you find this valuable. I personally think about these ideas all the time with respect to my product. What is really the difference that my product has, and do I have one, and do I know how to talk about it? What really is the benefit? What's the overt benefit? What are the individual benefits? What's the big market problem that I solve? I want to be able to articulate all of those things for my products. And if I can't articulate them, to me, that's a big problem, because it means that my product probably doesn't solve a problem, or there isn't anybody who needs it, or there isn't a difference between it and its competitors. And if I'm in that situation, I'm going to have a really hard time selling it successfully. So I'm always thinking about these things. They're always in my mind, in my brain, as I think about things. So thanks for watching and listening to the show today. I hope that this is, as I say, some useful information for you. If you like the video, please give me a like, subscribe to the feed. Please give me your comments if you like them. And whoops, went too far. Please give me your comments if you have questions or want me to cover specific things that I maybe didn't cover in this podcast or in this video, or the ones that have come before. You can see them all on my archive. I put them up on YouTube. I put them on Facebook. And I also put them up on my blog. I link to them. So you can easily go see older ones. I think they've all got a lot of meat in them. And so hopefully you find some things you find that are interesting to you. Anyway, for this week, until next week, this is Nels Davis, and I'm signing off, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.